Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Psi Games Talks. Today we have Pam Coronado, the intuitive detective, or in the past they used to call her a psychic detective. She's done amazing things on television. I'm going to have her step in and tell you about it. We're just so happy to have her here today. She will be with us, of course, at the Psi Games International this year, 2025, in Charlottesville, North Carolina. Virginia. I'm in North Carolina, and the 1st to the 3rd. So we love to see you there. And she's going to talk to us about her history, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what she's doing there. So I want to turn it over. Oh, I also want to thank our co-host, Tyler Stevens, who's here as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Miss Pam Coronado. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Pam.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me. I am most people call me a psychic detective or an intuitive investigator. It's funny. I kind of have gone with the psychic detective a lot because people don't know what an intuitive investigator is. So I end up just explaining what that means. I have been working in law enforcement since 1996 when I had a dream about a missing woman. I had a dream about her location and sort of I dreamed that I was actually, going through her experience. And so I dreamed about her location and what had happened to her. And I got brave enough to come forward and say something about it. And I approached the search parties, and we ended up finding her not alive. We ended up finding her that day. And that's when I realized that how important the work was and how it made me feel so rewarded and all of that. And then I decided I wanted to learn everything I could about this field. I was fascinated from that point on, and I just wanted to get better and better and hone my skills so I could help more people. And I've met some fascinating folks along the way. So many people, other people that, are probably going to be at the Psi Games. But I've just met so many incredible people in this journey, and I've learned so much from different mentors and things like that. So it's just been, and I never stop learning. I still love learning, and I still feel like, we always can learn from each other.
Now, I imagine that you having that dream had to be pretty overwhelming. So how does it go from you having this dream that's very, very overwhelming to actually coming forward to say something about it, and not feeling like they're going to think you're crazy, and even believing that it's not just a dream, but it's actually a foretelling of what's happening, or, an actual event that's taking place? Like, how do you go there? Because I know a lot of people have dreams all the time, and they may feel like they're very visceral and very real, but they don't step forward, and because they're like, oh, I'm just crazy. It was just whatever, Yeah,
well, that one, that's normally what I did. If I had a dream and I saw some sort of coincidence around it, I'd just be like, oh, that's weird. That's just a coincidence. But this particular dream, I was riding around in the back seat of a car, and there was a man in front of me and his mistress in the seat in front of me. And when he turned around to glare at me, I saw his face. And in the dream, I knew that was my husband, but that wasn't my real life husband. But in the dream, I understood this to be my husband. And I knew that they were getting ready to hurt me. I knew I was in danger. So I've told this story so much, but I glance out the window of the car, and there's an angel flying Peter Pan style outside the window, and she's sort of motioning for me to come with her. And so I'm thinking, well, I'd rather go with her than with them. So I fly. Next, I know I'm flying outside the car, and I'm looking down on the car so I could see the vehicle. I could see the road we were on. And the next thing I knew, I was in some place that I would describe as heaven.
Wow.
And I just felt like this crazy sense of reverence and should I even be here and all of that. And then I woke up and went, whoa, what was that? And then I didn't really do anything, but about 3 days later, we still had newspapers. I was looking at the newspaper in the morning and I saw the face of that man in my dream. And the headline said that his wife was missing. And him and his mistress were the prime suspects. So I still didn't say anything because I'm like, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are going to think I've lost it. So I still didn't say anything. I followed the case incessantly. And then about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks went by. I still didn't say anything. And then there was a news thing on at night, and the mother and I'll never forget it. The mother and the grandmother were on the news and they were crying. And they said, if there's anybody out there that knows anything that could help us find our daughter, would you please come forward? Just any little bit of information you may have, would you please come forward? I couldn't stand it. I was like, I can't let my ego be a jerk, right? If I could maybe help. And so I got brave and I went down there. I knew they were good. Every weekend they had like 200 people gathering and doing searches. So I got brave and I went down there, and I went I was just going to find an organizer and tell them, hey, I had this dream. And it turns out that the organizer was somebody I knew from high school.
Wow.
So, which was good and bad, because one, he knew I wasn't crazy. Two, I knew him from church. I grew up in a very strict church, think Southern Baptist. So this wasn't really okay, this having dreams and the intuitive stuff. So I just pulled him aside and said, you know what, I'm not psychic. I don't know what's happening. I had this dream. I think I know where she is. And I told him everything I knew about the dream, and he took it very seriously. And he actually introduced me he said, could you come with me? And I ended up spending the whole day working on this search and meeting the law enforcement and the guy who ended up being the killer. So it was just this crazy, surreal day that then we found her that afternoon. And at first I thought, well, that was just, a one-time crazy event. But it got out in the news that I had been helpful. And then people started calling me and asking me to help them with their missing person. And if I didn't dream, I'd say, if I didn't dream about them, I don't know how to help you. I don't know what to do. I want to help you, but I don't know what to do. So I started doing some research, and I found a guy named Alan Vaughn, who was a dream researcher, and he was a parapsychologist. And I just said, can I talk to you and kind of understand what's happening with these dreams? Because I had a bunch of them by this point. I was getting murdered all the time in my dreams. So I asked him, what's happening? And he explained about empathic dreams and all of those things. And eventually he said, I think you should meet a woman named Bevy Jagers. And Bevy, she had a group of police. They were active. A lot of them were active. Some of them retired, but they were all law enforcement guys. And she was working with them to help them use their own intuition. And it was called the U.S. Psi Squad. USPS Psi Squad, and she was in St. Louis. So she threw me into that group and trained me right along with all of them. So not only did I get to learn about controlling the intuitive stuff, I learned like how to do an investigation, what law enforcement needs, what they don't need, all of that stuff. So I kind of got those two forms of training at the same time, but she introduced me to Irva. So she's the one who introduced me to remote viewing and said, you need to learn about this. That was way back in 1999. I was way back in 1999. She started telling me about remote viewing, and Alan Vaughn, of course, was involved with Irva as well. So Alan got very sick, and he asked me if I would present his paper. He was supposed to present at Irva. I was at the time not a public speaker. I was like, I don't want to do that. But he said, as they do, he said, don't be a baby. He said, don't be a baby. Get up there. And so I promised him I would read his last paper. And that's what I did. He passed away before that conference happened. So my way of honoring him was to go up there and present his last paper. And in doing that, I met Paul Smith and Lynn Buchanan and all of those people. And they were so welcoming and so nice. And they felt so sorry for me, I think, because they knew I was terrified. But they were so welcoming, and they kept asking me to come back every year, and I just kept coming back. I kept coming back every year, and then eventually I got on the board, and eventually I became president, and I ended up spending 10 years in leadership at Irva.
Wow, that's really amazing. We kind of segued into your Irva time, and I still had some questions about you discovering that you had this gift and then turning that into something that you consistently did. I know that you even said that, because of meeting this guy and that you were involved, you guys were involved in church together and things of that nature, that made it very uncomfortable. When you did come out, did you have to battle? Did you have to have those battles, have those arguments or discussions or disagreements about people calling you this or that because you were using it? Because I know that I've met and I've bumped into people who will hear stories about yours and other people's, and they'll just say, well, regardless of how much good they did with it, it's still evil, like what, have you run up against that at all in your life?
Yeah, I have to reach down for a second and grab something the dog's chewing on.
Okay.
Okay. She got a tool. So, all right. The friend that I ran into was really accepting and open, right? So he wasn't an issue. And I have to say, I was kind of, embarrassed, really. I was just embarrassed a lot about telling people. So I kept it to myself a lot. I really didn't confide in very many people. I was married at the time, and even he was just like, what is happening? What is going on here? So it was really tough for me because, I was embarrassed. I didn't understand what was actually going on. And then the more and more I started accepting it and leaning into it, the more I started having to defend it. And I think for me, the biggest, because I'm not really one to worry so much about, what strangers think or people like that. But my parents really had a rough go of it. So my parents, we had a falling out. We had a pretty intense falling out for a while. I think we didn't speak for months. And our relationship was pretty strained for quite a few years until, I hate to say it, but I ended up getting a TV show called Sensing Murder, and I was working on Sensing Murder. And so that sort of blew the cover open, right? Because I was on TV on Discovery Channel every week. So the secret was kind of out. And at that point, they were getting a lot of positive feedback from people that had seen the show and from other relatives and things like that. And so I think they finally came around and, realized what I was doing wasn't evil or bad or anything like that, that I was actually trying to help people.
Okay. Wow. Tyler, you have anything on that?
Well, just in practicing, because you mentioned early on, people started coming to you. When or what was it that you felt confident enough to actually give, like service or something like that you could feel like you were providing a value or something to people?
Well, everything happened kind of in a divine way. I think it was really fascinating because the next person that came to me was probably about a week later. And they were asking about their missing daughter. And I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I want to help you, but I just don't know what to do. And somewhere in there, I got the suggestion to go to this woman who hypnotized me, a la ERV. She hypnotized me and we recorded the whole session, and she just asked me questions about this new case. And I really thought, well, this is crazy. I'm just making all this up, is what it felt like. But they handed that recording over to law enforcement, and there's something they call beginner's luck. Because that case got solved within just weeks after I gave them that information. So it's kind of a cool story if you want to hear it.
Yeah, please.
I told the mother a lot of things that came up in that session, and one of them was that his name was Rosengren. I heard the name Rosengren or something like that. And I described his personality and things. And the mother thought about it, couldn't figure out who I might be talking about. And then she had, at the time, how did this go? She was missing for a while before she was identified. So she had been found in another town, but they didn't know who she was. So she had not been identified yet. And so the mother was frantically going everywhere and talking to her friends and anyone she could think of about her daughter being missing. And she had gone to the jail. This is such a cool story. She had gone to the jail, and her other daughter, who looked a lot like the girl that was missing. Her name, we call her Babash. So the mother and sister of Babash got into the elevator at the jail, and they were going up, and there was a guy getting on. He was going to go down, but he had to go up with them first and then go down. You know how that works. Mm-hmm. So he rode up with them in the elevator, and he kept looking at the sister and saying, "Gosh, you really look familiar." And she was kind of creeped out by him and said, No, I don't think so. And he was insistent. No, you seem familiar to me. And the mother looked at him and said, "Wait a minute, you're talking about my other daughter." And she said, "I know who you are. You've been to my house before." And she said, "Babash is missing, and we're terrified something happened to her. Maybe you could help us search for her." And they handed him their phone number, and he goes on his way. So she gets home and she starts thinking about it. he never called and said, how can I help, for one? And two, she said his name was Robinson. And she just got this weird feeling because she said, wait a minute, he matches up with everything you said about him. And so she gave his name to law enforcement and said, hey, I want you to check this guy out. And turns out he had been involved in a crime in the past, and they had DNA on him, and they made a DNA match, and they had him.
Wow.
So the fact that she got into the elevator with this guy, I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they could have missed each other by 2-3 seconds or anything. And then why would he keep talking,
Yeah. Wow.
Crazy. Yeah.
And I'm sure that's
not my first 2 cases, like right out the gate. Right out the gate. And then it got harder from there.
Yeah. So do you feel like this was something, that you were destined for? It reminds me of like, the movie Dead Zone. Do you remember that movie where he like kind of gets into this accident? He wakes up, he's got this ability to see things that are going to come. And, it could have happened to anybody or not him, or if he had in the movie, if he had stayed with his lady that night, then that wouldn't happen. And so you hear these stories and you're just like, man, was this like destiny? Is this like, what's going on here? What is your determination based on your experience?
I felt like, there was some part of his soul that wanted to get caught, or, why would he keep talking and calling attention to himself? It just felt kind of like a weirdly divine meeting, know? So I always wondered if that was his subconscious that did that. Yeah.
And what about your gift though? And your expression, you being able to express that gift?
And I have to say, in the beginning, I hated it. In the beginning, I didn't want it. It wasn't my path. I thought I was going to be an architect. I was going to school for that, and I thought I was going to be an architect, and I wasn't interested in crime at all before that. I never watched, murder mysteries and stuff. And all of a sudden, this thing was taking over my life. But it's funny because I've never really been into it for the crime part. I'm good at it. I'm good at thinking like a detective and taking a case apart. But for me, it's the intuitive part. It's still working with spirit. It's still having that connection and learning everything I did about intuition and consciousness and how it all works, and still learning and still growing. Like, that's the part that fascinates me. The fact that I can use it to help people has been kind of the motivating factor for me to learn more, because I always wanted to hone my skills and get better and better and better so that I could be more effective. And so that always kind of drove me forward. But I'm just so fascinated with the whole field and consciousness and what people can and can't do. I teach, right? So you learn so much from other people, from watching their work and all of that. So I don't know. I just find the whole field completely fascinating. And now when I think about not doing that work and going and being an architect, I'm like, yeah, I can't see it.
Are there any indicators though? Your story about your dream really resonated with me, because I had a precognitive dream in which I got robbed, and 3 days later I ended up happening. So, wow. but I wonder, a lot of the spontaneous precognitive dreams, they're in the view of themselves, just in the future. But yours was in the place of somebody else. I wonder if there's like an indicator that you've noticed that, like, oh, I've had experiences as somebody else, or that, that would set you apart from just having psi experiences.
I don't know. I mean, I've had so many of those dreams, so many powerful dreams like that, where I'm in somebody else's experience and I don't know why. And some of them I still don't know why. why my higher self or soul is doing that. One of them was the Bin Laden. I dreamed I was one of the guys that went in there and got Bin Laden. I was the last guy in a row. when they were creeping up, they were in a dark room, and it was a little, I don't know if it was actually smoky or if it was, they had the infrared lights. We had infrared lights, and it was dark, and everybody was making hand signals, and I was like creeping up this stairway, trying really hard not to creak anything. And the guys were making hand signals and stuff. And I knew we were going up there to get somebody. Didn't know who that somebody was. And I knew the potential of shootout or something. I was scared I was scared. And as soon as I got to the top landing, I woke up. And then I heard, as I woke up, I heard this voice say, "We got him." And I'm thinking, got who? Like, what's happening? Got who? And it wasn't until, I think it was 2 days later, maybe 3 days later, I saw, that they got Bin Laden, and the headlines just said, "We got him." And I was just like, oh my gosh. But then I saw that movie, Oh, Dark 30, I think it was called. And when I saw the reenactment of them going in there and going up those stairs, I was just like, I was that guy. I was the guy at the back. Still to this day, no idea why I go into some of these situations. It's really crazy. And what was one of the reasons I reached out to Alan Bond was because I didn't know the difference between, am I having somebody else's experience, or is this a precognitive thing that might happen to me, like you were saying, so I was terrified a lot, because I was just like, am I having a precognitive experience, or am I having somebody else's experience? One of the examples was, it was really strange, because I woke up screaming. I literally woke up screaming, and there was someone climbing in the bathroom window. And it scared the bejeebies out of me, of course. And so I didn't know if that was a precognitive dream of something I needed to be afraid of, or if that was something else. And I went to work. I had a normal job at that time. I went to work, and we had a temp person in the office that day. And he said, I have to go. And he said that his sister had called him, and somebody had broken in and had climbed in her bathroom window, but she was screaming so loud it scared him away.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah.
What would you tell somebody who's going through this in their own personal life and they're not really sure what to do? I'm sure you get that question a lot, because you teach students. And so people will probably come to you with some apprehension at times, and they're just like, I'm not really sure why I'm here. And, what do you, because now this has been 30, 40 years of your life?
No, not that long, but.
Oh, okay. Because you said 99 and we're in 25. So I was
almost 30. Yeah, almost 30 years.
And then I was thinking you were probably doing it a little bit before then. So
yeah. Well, the dream happened in 1996. So in 1996, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't do the math right now in my head. But, one of the things that I discovered, and I still, to this day, the dream thing is still, that's still the one that's a little confusing sometimes. Like, am I having a warning, a precognitive thing of something that's going to happen? Or am I, again, dreaming somebody else's experience. And so sometimes, I would just be super, super hyper vigilant if I had a dream with one of the kids in it or something. But what I did learn, the dog's being so bad. What I did learn is that when you start to get control of the skills, it stops controlling you. So once you gain more control over everything, it stops controlling you. And that, like, I don't have all those dreams anymore. When I work on a case, it's because I sat down and I intentionally sat down and I'm working on the case. I don't have them invade my dreams all the time anymore and stuff like that. So I really do believe that when you set your intention that you're going to work with it and you're going to embrace it and you're going to do your best to understand it and develop and all of that, it stops kind of being a chaotic force, force in your world.
So, but that kind of answers my question, but my question is really like, how do you advise people who come to you? Do you say just that? Do you say, hey, if you
I
want
tell
to
them
control
that.
it, okay, if you want to control it, instead of it happening to you, you happen to it, kind of, like, okay, that's where we go. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah. And not to be afraid of it, like, because I thought of it as a curse for the longest time. I really was mad about it. I really thought it was a curse until I embraced it, because you feel so out of control, and you feel like you're going crazy sometimes. And so a lot of people will come to me after they've had all these crazy dreams, or, they've had some experience where something came to them and then it happened and they're worried that they're creating negative events or something. A lot of people are worried that they're creating negative events. And I always have an answer for that. And I think it's that anybody who's slightly sensitive, you're like a radio antenna that picks up signal. And so if you're walking around, unfortunately, negative stuff puts out a loud signal. Fear, anger, adrenaline, all of those emotions put out a really strong psychic signal. And so people who are sensitive pick that up. They don't pick up the family that's happy going to the park to play, right? They pick up the noisy signal that's really loud and intense. And so I always tell them, you're not creating these things, and there's nothing wrong with you because you're picking up on negative events. It's just that you're sensitive and they're loud. And so you're picking up on them because they're loud. I like somebody described it in a way that really, really resonated with me, is they said, like, if you think of a big event like 9/11, and you think of all the people who had precognitive things about 9/11, people who didn't think they were psychic before, had dreams of airplanes and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So, if you think of the image of the event itself as a pebble going into a pond, there's ripples that go out in both directions, in front and behind. And so those people who are sensitive are picking up on those ripples before the event happens. And that's the way I always think of it.
Yeah, like retro causality based off of a traumatic experience. That's how I see mine, because I was paying attention to my dreams and therefore the traumatic experience itself. But because I realized it after the fact, I said, oh, I had that dream. And that's, I think, the majority. But I did have a case in which I felt like, and maybe we're talking about this, in which you are able to change the dream outcome. J.B. Ryan has talked about this a few times, where people have actually felt like they've had a precognitive dream enough times that they can recognize when the moment is that they actually are precognitive about. Do you feel like that is possible there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely do. I don't think those dreams are an absolute. Sometimes I think that they are a warning of some sort, and that we have free will to change it by having that information. So
it's the age old have a dream about an airplane crashing the day before you go on a flight. Do you take the plane?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, I tend to have. I recall watching a movie that whether or not you took the plane or not didn't matter, because if you didn't take the plane,
that was Final Destination.
Death was still going to come find you some way, somehow, and it'd probably be worse.
Yeah, what's funny about that is that was my first time ever. I was on. I'm actually on the original Final Destination DVD.
Wow.
I swear they asked me to go on there and speak. They asked Alan Vaughn to do it, and he was sick, so I had to do it for him. And so I was just like, no, if you use the information to save yourself, it's not true that life's going to chase you down and kill you afterwards. Like,
wow. That's cool. Now everybody is going to be running, all the people who are old enough to have DVDs are going to be running to go get those DVDs and check them out and be like, hey.
There's like a little bonus section, and and they did a 20-minute thing about my life and the work I was doing and stuff. That was like the first time I was in this media. I kept thinking they were crazy. I was like, why would you want to follow me to the grocery store and talk about what I'm doing? Like, I thought that they were crazy. I thought it would be the most boring thing ever.
Yeah. So Pam, here's a really great question. We're at a dinner party. We're standing there. You're telling me about what you do. I look you in the eye and I say, yep, that's you. I thought you were a nice person, but seems like what you're doing is like pure evil. How do you deal with that? What do you say back? I mean, like, don't take the easy route out and say, I just walk away.
No, I'm too snarky.
I'm being precognitive right now. Don't take that way out of there.
I'm too snarky for that. I usually say, it depends on the audience. It depends on the audience, right? A lot of times, like my parents, I would say, well, I'm not the one out murdering people, I'm the one trying to help people. So It seems like if it was coming from an evil source, it would be telling me to do bad things. It wouldn't be helping people and bringing healing to people. So that's one thing that I say to people. Sometimes I will dive a little bit into the religious part, just because I grew up with it and I understand it. And so sometimes I can sort of meet them where they are and talk them through it a little bit.
Huh. That's a great answer. Good job.
Thank you.
You could stay at this dinner party.
Yeah.
Well, I think, one of the great things about the Psi Games and what we're doing, let's talk about that a little bit, is that, and it sounds like you're doing this already, which is building a community for people to feel like, like they're not crazy or they're not, alone. And so the whole idea behind the Psi Games and it being the Psi Games International was us being able to bring people from everywhere together. Under this idea of, not just having fun with psychic abilities, testing them, but then having researchers there who can look at this stuff and help us figure out some of the reasons why these things are the way they are. And so, what do you say about the Psi Games and your role at the Psi Games and the things that you're doing? Let's jump into that a little bit.
Yeah, I am so excited about the Psi Games for a lot of reasons. One, it is so fun to be in a huge group of like-minded people. The energy is just so high, and it is so fun. But, I just think it's important for people to be around like-minded folks and really understand that this is a human capability, and you're not a freak, for one. But that, there's people from all different walks of life that are having these experiences, and different countries and cultures and professional backgrounds. And I mean, I've seen people from all different walks of life in some of these conferences and stuff. And that just makes me happy to see people from so many different walks of life embracing this. But it's just super fun to be with other like-minded people, and you can ask those crazy questions you're not going to ask anybody at the coffee shop. You can ask people whatever crazy question you want, and it's not going to be weird. That I love the community. I think it's so important to create that community for people so they don't feel alone. I felt really alone when I started, and the internet has changed things a lot now, but at the time, people in far-flung places didn't really have anybody to turn to. There was nobody. They could be having all these experiences and have nobody to talk to about it, and be like me, have a family that's not going to embrace it either. And so that's really one of the reasons I started teaching. I just wanted to create that platform for people to connect so they wouldn't feel so alone out there, and they wouldn't give up on it. So that's one of the reasons I really, really like it. I think one thing, having fun, there's three things. So that's one. Two, having fun is so important, I think, in doing this work, even though it seems like, what I do is so serious. But I play games with my students, and I have something on Facebook called Fun Friday, where we play every Friday. And it's just because when you're playful with it, the more playful you are, the better your connection's going to be, because you're not trying so hard and you're not pushing it away because you're stressed out. The more playful and lighthearted and curious you can be, the better off you're going to be in developing it. So that's why I always incorporate play. I try to always incorporate play into the equation there, keeping your energy high, having fun with it, being curious, all of that stuff. All of that's going to be represented here in these games. But then the third thing is truly just being able to, the first time I ever went to an IRVA conference, I was just so stunned at how you could just walk up to these people and talk to them. You could walk up to Paul Smith and have a conversation with them, or you could meet Hal Puthoff and sit down and have a conversation with them, And that to me is just amazing, to be able to, just sit down and have conversations with these people. So.
Now, do you find that, what will you actually, let me backtrack. What will you be doing there? What will you be teaching?
Oh, I'm going to be teaching a workshop.
Okay.
About being an intuitive investigator, or psychic detective, as you want to call it. So I'll be doing a live 1.5 hour workshop. We'll do some hands-on training for everybody. So I'm not just going to be standing up there talking. People are going to be doing the work, and they're going to learn how to work with photos. I think we're going to learn how to determine dead or alive from photos. And they're also going to learn how to determine just from a photo if somebody's potentially violent or nonviolent. I always say this is a good thing for those in the dating world, online dating. So being able to read the character of a person through the photo, things like that.
Wow, that sounds pretty impactful. And there's probably some questions that I have on that, but I don't want to overcome. I want to see if Tyler has anything, because I know he's always got something going on back there. So,
well, we talked about just in the Psi Games, I think the development of people's abilities and also performing on stage. You mentioned that I think you've also kind of performed on a little bit bigger of a stage. Do you find that it kind of gets your skill to elevate, or or maybe like a person by person basis? But what do you think about for performing like Psi on a bigger stage for people?
I've always been told that your subconscious will step up to the plate. And that has been true for me. So of all the times, and I've been put through the fire a lot on live TV. So my show, Sensing Murder, was all done live. And I would walk in and they would introduce me to the detective on the screen. And I, had to take the case from 0 to 60. And it was all live. So the whole thing was unscripted. And I've been in different situations like that where I've demonstrated like CRV and things like that on camera. So I'm not a stranger to being in the hot seat. And I think, part of it is your own self-talk. You have to have positive self-talk. If you're, sitting there going, I'm going to blow it, you're going to blow it, you're going to blow it. But if you have a positive, self-talk, and I just think your subconscious rises to the occasion.
Wow.
Right.
Well, I think that's beautiful. And, going back to going back to what I was thinking about just now with your dead or alive thing, that's kind of interesting to me, like that you can look at a photo and you can somehow tell whether or not this person is still in the living realm or if they're in the spirit realm.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? Like, is there some sort of different type of energy signature from when a person is alive, or, how does that show up in your world?
Let me jump back for 1 second before I answer that. I always tell my students one thing. There's no such thing as failing. There's always learning. You didn't fail, you learned. So get that one out. That one out there. You're not going to walk up there and fail. You're going to learn if you, so there's no failing, there's learning. Determining, because that's the number one question I get. The minute a detective or somebody, a family member, hands me the photo of a person that's missing, that's what they all want to know. Are they alive or not alive? And that changes the way that we're going to handle the search. So I've had to, it is the one thing that I take really seriously. I do not want to get it wrong. That is one thing I do not want to get wrong. So I have practiced it. And, I can't say I'm 100%, nobody can, but I'm in the high 90s. So I tell people to focus on the physical body of the person in current time and not wherever their soul might be, because it's super confusing for people who are mediums that talk to dead people. They're not going to know if they're talking to a live person or a dead person. They're not going to know. But I stay focused on the physical body. And if I feel like they're in there or not in there, are they breathing, not breathing? Are they moving around? What's going on with the physical body at this point in time? Because I get a lot of calls where somebody's only been missing 24, 48 hours. And everybody wants to know, are they still alive? What's happening? Some Amber Alerts and things like that. So I have to be able to tell in current time at this moment if they're alive or not alive and what's happening with them. So that's the only way I can do it, is to stay focused on their physical body.
So is that like, would you consider that remote viewing, remote sensing? Like what is that for you? What do you call that?
It's probably close to remote viewing because I take my consciousness to where they are.
Okay. But you're also, so you're bilocated because you're still here. You're still where you are, but you're also where
But
they are.
I literally take my consciousness and sit down next to them. So I want to be able to sit down right next to them, and then get a feel for what's going on with them in current time.
It sounds a little bit too like psychometry, where you would maybe take an object or something and then be able to gather information based off of, maybe do you work with that at all? Or do people bring you maybe some items or try and find that information from that?
Yep. In Sensing Murder, that was one of the jumping through hoops things, was that they would walk in and hand me something that belonged to the victim. I didn't even know who the victim was. I had no idea. They would just hand me an object, and then I would have to describe the victim. Once I described the victim well enough, then they would give me a photo. Then I was like, okay, now we can get down to business and I can do this. So, but yeah, psychometry definitely is a tool. It's less now, just because the way the internet is and people are sending digital photos all the time and stuff like that. But sometimes I still want to request something that could be helpful.
Wow. So for the skeptics that say it's all BS,
what we do?
It sounds like you have a strong, pile of evidence that says different.
Yeah, because I think the reason people, and that's why I did Sensing Murder, that's really why I took that show, was because I didn't think I was going to win over skeptics, and I didn't care to, but I wanted to get the people who were on the fence, who were not sure what's going on. I just wanted to reach those people and have them see, hey, she's struggling. She's not claiming to know all of the answers. She's not pretending she's 100% perfect. She's sitting struggling there. She's going, I don't know. I wanted them to see me struggle. I actually wanted them to see me struggle and wanted them to see the whole process so that it became more real for them.
Yeah, genuine. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Like not somebody making all these wild claims, of I'm brilliant and I can do this and I can do that. And I wanted them to see the nitty gritty of the whole thing and why and how it works. And then see that that's actually accessible and that's, something that they can relate to.
Yeah. That's, I think it's really unfair for the field of Psi that, you have people wanting things to be 100% all the time. It's like if you're into basketball or football, if a person has an 80% from the 3-point line, then that's good enough. And some nights they don't do so well. And you don't say, well, they're not a great basketball player. You'll say, well, they didn't do good tonight. And then tomorrow they do a little bit better. And so it's up and down and up and down, and people go through those type of challenges and those struggles. But then when it comes to Psi, they're like, oh, you can either do it right now or you can't. And if you can't do it right now, then you just suck forever. And even if you can't do it today and then we come back tomorrow, you can't do it, then you still suck. It's like, it's no like, oh, you're a human being. Maybe this ability is something that just like every other ability we have has days where you're really on. And, like Michael Jordan, someday he'll just be on. He can't put things. He could close his eyes, stick his tongue out and spin around and throw the ball. And it still makes an end. And everybody's like, how did that even work? But then other days, maybe he's not so good, back in his time, but it's that same thing. But we don't seem to get that in the realm of Psi. It's just like, it's not real.
I think I know why. I really think I know why. And that was why I wanted the TV show, because I wanted to combat that a little bit, was that, I think the media is a lot at fault for that. I think the media has always represented it that way, that you were either 100% on or you were a charlatan. But, I think the way that it was all portrayed in the media was always, some of my friends that work on camera a lot, we talk about this, we always tell our students, remember, when you see me on TV, you're seeing the highlights reel, right? You're not seeing the flubs and the misses and the I don't knows and they're seeing the highlight reel and they're making it look easy and that. So a lot of times it's how the media is kind of portraying it too, that they're making it more unrealistic.
Mm. Mm. Wow.
And then people are disappointed. That's one of the things I find with students is that they have this expectation that it's going to be easy or it's going to look like when Pam did it. Well, no. One, you're seeing the highlights reel, and two, I've been doing it for almost 30 years, right? So I've had a lot more practice, but they'll have this expectation of themselves. They're holding themselves to some crazy expectation that's just not fair.
Mm. Mm. Wow. That's well said. And I think that's what makes you a great teacher, and so I can't wait to have you at the Psi Games and, see all of the magical things that you are able to pass on to the next generation. I think it's going to be magnificent. This is the first time something on this magnitude has been done in this way. So, yeah. And you're a part of it. All three of us are a part of it. So, yeah. This is going to be really beautiful. Tyler, there anything you want to ask before we get out of here tonight?
No, it's been a phenomenal discussion. Thank you, Pam. I appreciate your time. And
thank you for all you're doing too.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And the team, of course, obviously, doing so many things and bringing this out and making it fun and exciting. So thank you for doing that too.
Well, thank you, Pam. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys. And Pam, how can we find you if we wanted to get in contact with you?
Go to my website, pamcoronado.com.
Too easy. And your name is spelled right here on the screen, so nobody has to try to figure out what Coronado, how to spell it.
How to spell Coronado. I always get this joke on Friday. People start calling me Corona a lot, and I'm like, no.
Well, until next time, thank you, and we're out.
Okay. Bye.
Step into the beyond, let your mind ignite, where the limits dissolve in the glow of the light. A world unseen, we will rise to explore, unlocking the depths of our universal core. Psi Games, let's push beyond lies, where hearts, souls, and minds